What happens when a desperate thief stumbles into my backyard, forcing me to confront my fears and question the very nature of justice in a world gone mad? The evening dragged on, punctuated only by my frenzied pacing in the living room. I peered through the window with hyper-vigilant eyes as the mists of twilight curled around my front yard. Each creak of the floorboards echoed in my ears like a drumroll announcing the next act of an absurd play. My life as a reluctant protagonist in a very bad thriller. The homeless encampment nearby had turned from a distant nuisance into a horrifying reality, morphing my sanctuary into a breeding ground for trespassers. Night after night, I tried to convince myself that staying vigilant was merely an exercise in caution, but deep inside, that familiar dread whispered, "What if tonight's the night they strike?" And with each whisper, my heart raced faster, tethered to a mixture of outrage and pure terror at being reduced to a mere spectator in my own home. Derek Waters lived right next door, always ready, it seemed, to relish his neighbor's mismanagement while sprawled in his luxury. His condescending smirk appeared any time our paths crossed, as if he held the keys to paradise, while the rest of us scrambled through the garbage of this world. Perhaps his main hobby was mocking my homemaking skills from the plush confines of his estate. "Oh, Jordan," he would say with a gleeful sneer, "you do know that the best defense is a good offense. You might want to consider hiring a security guard instead of all those cameras." His words sent a jolt of indignation through me. How was he blissfully unaware of the burden that had torn through my daily life? I imagined my security system buzzing through the night, catching Derek unaware. The humorous thought sparked a flicker of warmth in the pit of my stomach. If I could just catch one of these intruders, my life would have the climax it so desperately craved. In the hours between dusk and darkness, I'd finally decided to showcase my security system's prowess. With my trusty friend Maya on speed dial, I prepared for the trial run of my fancy new tech fortress. Her no-nonsense attitude often propelled me to a more resilient state, defiance in the face of absurdity. "Maya, this layer of security is going to change my life. I'm not just keeping out petty thieves. I'm reclaiming my peace of mind," I declared, trying to ignore the dread creeping into the corners of my mind. She chuckled softly on the other end, her confidence as reassuring as it was infectious. "Just give me a shout if you need my technical magic. I've seen how these systems misbehave. You'll be fine as long as you don't go full horror movie on me." With that, I steeled myself for the showdown, armed with remote access to my own observatory of justice. As the shadows deepened outside, just before I'd consider turning in for the night, an anxious noise rang out, metal clinking followed by muffled whispers. The very sound sent adrenaline shooting through my veins like an electric bolt. I crept to the window and peered out. His small silhouette loomed larger within the confines of my shed, my fortress of tools, broken-down furniture, and remaining shreds of hobbies long abandoned. My chest tightened with a mix of fury and fear. How dare they invade more than they already had? My resolve solidified. This is it. You're about to learn what happens when you mess with the wrong homeowner. The warmth bubbling inside morphed into fierce determination. I was prepared to unleash every ounce of technology I had on this trespassing menace. Summoning a deep breath, I activated my security system, what felt like setting off a cannon rather than just a harmless alarm. A floodlight blared into existence, illuminating the thief with blinding brilliance. I could see the panic twist through his body as my camera feed streamed to my phone. It felt like I was watching a wildly gripping episode of a crime drama, only I didn't have to keep my hands smooth and pretty. No. This was real life. He stumbled backward, his wide eyes reflecting shock as the spotlight turned him into my very own living, breathing criminal, all while I shifted between disbelief and unabashed glee. "Caught you, buddy. Hope the snacks in the shed were worth it," I muttered under my breath, snickering at the absurdity of the situation while filled with an unpredictable blend of triumph and rage. Yet as quick as my clever little victory seemed, it was outrun by the impending bleakness of the reality surrounding me. What was to happen next? Did I acknowledge the stuck, trembling figure on my lawn, or would a captivating stroke of fate await? Call the cops, or just let him escape? I furiously debated with myself, unyielding redirecting my frustration towards the bureaucratic nightmare that awaited if I called the authorities. I could almost imagine the police questioning my sanity, asking why I even bothered to complain when the world outside my window had devolved into a circus of incompetence. Was it truly justice served if I handed this creature over to a system that had failed everyone involved? Just then, as if summoned by my chaotic musings, a growl of discontent erupted in my gut, followed by an epiphany. Justice could be served in my own way. But what would that entail? The absurdity of the situation begged for resolution, and I was done being a passive player in a story that was writing itself anyway. What would I choose to do next? The moment I witnessed that hapless thief reeling in the light like a startled deer, well, it was hard to contain my joy. "Welcome to the end of the line, pal," I shouted, though I doubt he heard me over the hum of panic thrumming through every nerve cell of his unfortunate body. Despite the adrenaline surge, a new realization dawned on me. This was no ordinary burglar. This was a manifestation of my mounting hysteria over the encroaching disaster flourishing just outside my door. Did scavenging through my recycled junk somehow bestow merit upon him? Instinctively, I shifted from enraged homeowner to some twisted version of moral authority. But what kind of justice was I even wielding? The idea of confronting him as the neighborhood avenger filled me with both dread and an odd thrill. And I couldn't ignore the fiery weight of absurdity wedged deep in my gut. Was I really entertaining a home invasion as an existential crisis ripe for an epiphany? Breath-hitching like a malfunctioning elevator, I fumbled for my phone, struggling between primal instincts and the rational consciousness fighting for survival against wave after wave of lingering doubts and fears. "Dial the cops," a tiny voice squeaked, drowning in a symphony of madness. But what would I say? "Excuse me, officer, I have a live guest visiting my shed. He's dedicated and resourceful, if uninvited." I could see the cop rolling his eyes from a mile away, leaving me right back where I started, trapped in this chaotic, hysterical dance of absurdity. Was it a social experiment gone wrong? Or were these the fates unspooling before my very eyes? A delicious fit of mischief began bubbling with each passing second, my resolve threatened by an idea only half formed in the eye of the storm. "Let's see how far the cosmic joke plays out," I muttered, horrified, yet smiling. Glancing down at the unruly crumple of my hoodie felt oddly empowering. As the man caught sight of my shaped-up silhouette beside the window, his expression shifted from shock to sheer panic. In an instant, the world outside transformed from my serene neighborhood dreamscape to an elaborate heist scene. I, armed with hardware and tech wizardry, ready to thwart a faux criminal mastermind using sheer stubbornness and against all odds determination. The spotlight illuminated too much for this sorry intruder who flailed backward, lost in the harsh light, bumping into my rusty lawnmower like a Keystone Cop. "Good luck explaining that one to your friends back at the camp," I jeered, half expecting a clap of thunder and lightning, perhaps accompanied by the ghost of my misplaced sanity laughing alongside me. My heart raced with a cocktail of triumph and adrenaline as momentum initiated a magnetic pull within me. Yet doubt loomed like a predatory shadow over this shining moment. Was I turning into Derek Waters, relishing another's downfall in an ironic twist of fate? In the heat of the moment, I suddenly realized my stolen inner peace had morphed into a steely resolve. I was resolved to play this absurd game. I couldn't let the universe frame me as the passive homeowner while I cowered behind my blaring spotlight. No longer would I fold under societal expectations or concern for my reputation amidst a circus led by royally incompetent authorities. Seizing the moment, I stepped out of the halo of light and into the darkened yard. The thief quaked as the spotlight danced upon him, illuminating his tattered clothes and unfocused gaze. Did I see desperation? Was it flickering behind those wide eyes? My heart tugged, but then reason wrapped its claws around my outrage, lighting a flame of determination. If anyone was going to root the narrative from the quagmire of absurdity, it had to be me. "What's it going to be?" I quipped, striding toward him like a confident captain surveying the battlefield. "Playtime's over, buddy. You're not in a special episode of Burglar's Guide to the Galaxy anymore." The ridiculousness of what I was doing curdled beneath hasty bravado. This was real life. I was confronting someone actually in my space, and fear intertwined with gallows humor as I hardened my expression against the swirl of tendencies screaming compassion. He gulped, eyes darting around as if searching for a vulnerable escape hatch while I feigned unshakable authority. You didn't think I'd get here without backup? I laughed venomously, tapping my phone as if introducing the Hollywood blockbuster finale where the hero always claimed victory against the odds. The world froze. Time hung leisurely, suspended between us, heavy with every word I chose. So tell me, what personal goal brought you to my yard? A quest for a wooden chair or the thrill of a lawnmower ride? I inquired with derisive mirth, heightening the tension while bringing a calm disdain into the chaos. There was a flicker of recognition in his eyes, suggesting a growing awareness of the ridiculousness of his own act. The balance shifted in my favor, and my fear ebbed into thin air, replaced by a delightfully theatrical flippancy that rolled off my tongue. Welcome to the glorious reality of my shed and all its fascinating treasures. If you want an exclusive tour, let's connect, but let's make it quick. I've got a matinee performance to catch. So here I was, donned in the armor of sheer indignation, wrapped snugly in the hoodie of my resolve, pitted against a forgotten soul trying to rob me of my sanctity and holding the cards. I cracked my knuckles, adrenaline-wise, knowing there was no going back. I could either behold this absurdity as it played out, or break through the inadequacy of the world's bureaucratic demands with my daring, and perhaps terrible, vigilante ambivalence. Maybe this was the cosmic catalyst I had unwittingly set in motion. But as that thought coursed through, the buzzing questions floated. What ties bound him to this sad state of affairs? And what heartbreak had landed him on my lawn? The unraveling threads of fate were tracing a trap of justice and intrigue. But it was my choice how to weave this narrative. What would it be? The point of no return was upon me, a dark humor echoing through my laughter, intertwined with weighty choices. Would I stand tall to make a change, even amidst pure chaos, or let the night's shadows consume me? Panic clawed at the edges of my bravado, each heartbeat drumming a rapid tempo against the backdrop of my uninvited guest's desperate confusion. Did I really want to know what chasing an existential crisis looked like in another person? But I wasn't about to shy away from this moment. Oh no. The narrative of my otherwise predictable suburban life hung suspended like a neon sign flashing welcome to my shade of absurdity. I studied his face for signs of violence. I racked my brain to piece together my plan of action, or should I say my spectacularly misguided screenplay. In this makeshift drama, I was no longer merely Jordan Ellis, homeowner. I was the heroine of my own chaotic production, ready to turn the tides. Look, are we doing this, or what? I challenged him as if I was the gatekeeper of some mystical realm and he was an ill-prepared contestant for failure. The thief's gaze, frantic and bewildered, darted around my dim-lit yard like a rabbit caught in a lion's den. I caught the flash of desperation reflected in his wide eyes, and unpredictably, a pang of empathy nudged against my ironclad indignation. What depths of life had driven him to this? But did that even matter? Maybe street philosophy and compassion weren't on the syllabus for intruders. So why was I even contemplating a save-the-day narrative for him? He gulped, moisture gathering in the corners of his lips. There was a humanness there, a connection fleeting yet powerful enough to nearly sway me. But just as quickly, my inner defensive wall slammed shut, fueled by all those moments I had felt violated, watched, and dehumanized simply for wanting some semblance of safety. Listen, buddy, it's time for you to resign from this impromptu staging of life on the fringe, I declared grandiosely, hoping to sound like the imperious queen of my own chaotic court. Don't lose your edge, Jordan. My knees may have quaked just a tinge at the thought of him lunging forward or crying, but that would not diminish the triumphant anecdote I was stitching together. So what do you expect to gain from rummaging through my shed? A treasure map leading to what? Someone's discarded dreams. I spat, stoking the outrageousness of the situation as it felt only natural. His silence, punctuated by a weak shuffle backward, whispered back to me with a potent mix of vulnerability and guilt. Maya's voice trickled in the back of my mind like a reassuring flicker, reminding me about containing the chaos. You know what he's doing is illegal, right? You're within your rights. She'd told me the day we installed the security system, her words echoing like a mantra. So here I stood, teetering on the line between justice and pity, my heart in a confusing tug of war over the absurdity of it all. Ugh. The line between vigilante justice and having a full-on existential crisis, was getting thinner by the moment. What was I to do? Was I going to take the high road and offer this man the opportunity to have a heart-to-heart over my lawnmower? Or was I going to stomp my righteous foot down and banish him from my yard forever? You want to test if my shed has a bewitching set of lawn chairs? Oh, honey, you stand no chance. I laughed lightly, desperate to mask the simmering anger that screamed at me to do something radical. A flicker of annoyance surged through my flippancy when I realized that would be acknowledging him as a person, a being deserving of respect. But did I really want to shower a stranger with kindness while he trespassed on my sanity? Here's the deal. Let's discuss your aspirations. I threw out in mock negotiation. Do you want the privilege to rummage through the sorrowfully neglected remnants of my garage? Or will we close contracts with absolutely no remorse? As absurd as my stance had become, a wild sense of empowerment thrummed through my veins like electric current. Even if he appeared on the brink of fleeing into the darkness, a spark of humor lit the tension. Still, the bewildered thief fell silent, processing my outlandish questions, transforming an absurd confrontation into a collage of chaotic dark comedy. That's it? No spectacular monologue about your heartbreaking plight? I taunted, too invested now in performing this oddity. What do you think this is, a casting call for America's Got Struggles? Newsflash, contestant. This is the season finale. I straightened up, my spine stiffening with a reignited defiance. I had no vows to uphold to the politically correct, compassion-driven narrative everyone seemed to preach, while I wallowed in my frustrations. The unfurling chaos settled upon us like a comical encore in this freak show of a performance, but the truth lingered just below the surface. The gallows humor wrapped around my tirade, combined with the primal instinct of wanting to reclaim what was mine, felt intoxicating and dangerously liberating. A boundary had blurred, and I was clearly about to divulge a moment of theatrical reckoning. Would I cast him into the role of redemption, or was it time to take the mask off? The question loomed large, thickening the atmosphere as I turned to scan my yard. The stillness mocked my plight while I played at being both judge and jury in this twisted tale of survival. The alarm still echoed in the backdrop, a relentless reminder of my vulnerabilities. But now it felt almost comically exaggerated in this surreal setting. With an exaggerated sigh, I paced back and forth, reinvigorating my resolve. You see, I declared, channeling my inner diva, the real issue here isn't your questionable career choice. It's all the implications your actions have on the sanctity of my turf. And just like that, clarity seeped through the madness. This wasn't just about confronting an intruder. It was about drawing the proverbial line in the sand, claiming my space amid the chaos that life had thrown my way. Would I turn this moment into an epic saga of survival, justice, and witticism? Or would I let the universe draw me back into the mundane dread of helplessness? It was my gripping performance, and how would it all end? The absurdity of the moment wove a delicious tension in the air. It was almost theatrical, a dark comedy in the making. I could feel the adrenaline pulsing through my veins, like a twisted rush that came with confronting a burglar who was more confused than malicious. Yet the flame of my indignation burned brightly. From the corner of my eye, I spotted my security cameras, little electronic sentinels perched like silent guards, blinking their green eyes in eager anticipation of the unfolding drama. I could almost hear them whispering, "Your play, your rules, Jordan." Did I dare take a step back and allow compassion to momentarily sway my judgment? Nah. I was having far too much fun crafting my righteous monologue, ready to subdue this nightmare with my wit as a weapon. The intruder's gaze finally locked onto mine, a flicker of question shadowing his panic-stricken face. How had it come to this? I imagined my neighbor Derek peeking through his blinds, reveling in the spectacle like a gloating monarch. The irony was thick enough to slice through. Here I was, the homeowner turned unexpected heroine, confronting a man who, in another life, could have been just a neighbor instead of an ominous trespasser. I laughed internally at the ridiculousness of the situation, rubbing my temples. "You've stumbled into my life at the wrong moment, my friend," I proclaimed, channeling my inner dramatic diva, because trust me when I say it's not often I play host to uninvited guests who think they can raid my kingdom while I'm here holding court. He shifted uneasily, and for the first time, a hint of vulnerability glimmered in his eyes, momentarily distracting me from his potential threat. "You have no idea what I'm going through," he began. And oh boy, here came the potential monologue, adrift on waves of existential tragedy. I braced myself, fully expecting to be hit by a flood of apologetic tales, a pitiful gauge comparing our plights. But I quickly cut that thought short when I was struck with an idea so deliciously wicked that I could almost taste the metaphorical schadenfreude. Was I going to let this man absolve himself through storytelling? Absolutely not. Save the sob story for open mic night down at the community center, I quipped with a mockingly sympathetic smile. If we were playing characters, I was going to be the sarcastic truth-teller who demanded accountability rather than pity. The glimmer of defiance kindled within me as I continued to press upon him. "Tell me, what life lessons have you gleaned from this harrowing tale of yours? What gems of wisdom do you glean from the shadowy corners of my shed?" I laughed a wickedly triumphant laugh, almost giddy at the power shift. Was I losing it? Maybe by playing the role of a disdainful interrogator, I could reclaim some semblance of authority in this bizarre situation. Why should I coddle him? Digging through my garden tools wasn't just a minor faux pas. It felt like a declaration of war against my home and my sanity. "You don't seem like an aspiring artist of the craft. You're here shopping for forgotten relics. Sorry, buddy. But my weed whacker isn't off the clearance rack." The relentless alarm in the background kept crescendoing like an orchestra's final act, each beep pushing me further into a theatrical frenzy. It was almost poetic. Did this unfortunate man even realize the absurdity he'd waltzed into? I wanted to grab some popcorn and marvel at the comedy. Yet here I was, living it. What was it going to take to bring this background symphony down to a whisper? This was my narrative, unyielding and fierce. I needed to be the gruesome angel of my own epic saga, not its comedic relief. Finally, I took a deep breath to assert my resolve, my heart pounding in sync with the chaotic rhythm of my pounding thoughts. "You chose an unlikely stage for your performance. Didn't you consider an open field or a dumpster? What an oversight." In that moment, something shifted in me. Deep-rooted anxiety morphed into determination as I settled into my role as the fierce protector of my territory. Oh, how this guy's identity went from mere nuisance to an unwitting collaborator in my quest for reclaiming what was rightfully mine. "Allow me to enlighten you," I declared, pointing my finger like a jailer handing down a sentence. "This is my domain, and you're the newly appointed jester with a very short lease. So why don't you do us both a favor? Save the attempt at emotional manipulation, and let's cut to the chase here, shall we?" The internal chaos brewing within me paled in comparison to the daring pivot I was making. How utterly ridiculous that we were both embroiled in this farce. Yet here I stood, filled with a righteous fury that ultimately turned the tide. As the bewildered man seemed to grasp the futility of his predicament, I could hardly contain the bubble of triumph swelling inside me. It was as though a spotlight had suddenly illuminated the truth of our exchange. This wasn't just an insolent intruder who had wafted into my life like a rancid cloud. It was an opportunity to evoke change. A shift had ignited, one set to heat up my blood, and I kicked it up a notch, raising my voice to echo my truths. "This madness ends now. You can either wander off into the night with your dignity intact, or you can face a queen who will generously provide you with several shades of humiliation. Your choice." With that, I relished the tension that now hung palpably in the air. Would this chaotic encounter finally thrust me down the decisive path toward reclaiming my sense of home and safety? The intruder shifted uneasily, the fight in his eyes dulled by surprise, and a twinge of respect for my audacity. "You really think I care about dignity?" he retorted, sarcasm dripping from his words like poison. "I'm in your shed, aren't I?" Oh, the audacity! I could practically hear the universe chuckling at the irony of it all. This was a desperate man trying to reclaim a shred of power in a situation where, frankly, he had none. Was it an attempt to regain some semblance of coolness amidst the panic? "Not under my watch." "Yes, darling," I shot back, pulling my shoulders back in exaggerated stature. "But it's not the state of your dignity that concerns me. It's the state of my garden tools. And trust me, I have zero sympathy for anyone rummaging through my sacred space. So do enlighten me. Where did this little foray into potential robbery come from? Did you lose poker with Lady Luck herself? His face flickered a rich tapestry of emotions, confusion, irritation, maybe even a hint of embarrassment. You wouldn't understand. Each word dripped with that all-too-familiar blend of indignation and denial. But here I was, a gladiator in the ring, armed with snark and the high ground. Try me, I shot back, ready to dive into the cesspool of societal issues he likely would toss out in a futile attempt to connect his plight to mine. Did he honestly believe that emotions could anchor him to some twisted sense of social justice? This is not exactly a TED Talk moment, buddy. Are we supposed to feel sorry for your plight, or applaud your choice of slippery slope? Making my shed your roadside pickup? Wake up, Picasso. Your current artistic choice is far too reckless for an exhibition. At that moment, just as I was about to weave some poetic brilliance from the threads of my fury, my phone buzzed erratically in my pocket. A notification signaled that my security system had detected more movement. Oh, the irony. Not just any intruder now, but a full-blown party of potential miscreants had popped up on the live feed, the darkened silhouettes hovering near the fence like hungry vultures. The dude before me, who I almost sympathized with, although that was just my brain playing tricks, was now turning into a mere battleground while the war raged outside. "Heads up!" I exclaimed, leaning into my newfound confidence. "As if you thought this was a one-man affair? Looks like your friends are itching to join this dramatic ensemble." His eyes widened, perhaps realizing that I was serious about standing my ground. "I can't control what they do," he shouted defensively, but I'd already received my inspiration, the sudden twist in the plot igniting something rebellious within me. "Can't control? My dear misguided friend, that sounds like a personal issue. Welcome to How to Take Accountability 101. My adrenaline practically sang with delight as I envisioned a makeshift defense, a barricade of garden gnomes and brightly colored lawn chairs to hold the line. The absurdity of the image fueled my mocking laughter. Wouldn't that be something? A DIY Home Alone remake featuring mine truly. "What's next?" I shouted dramatically, surging my vitriol into the next phases of this unexpected show. "Hiding behind your own victims? Now that's rich." Suddenly, the security alarms wailed again, loud enough to shake any remaining semblance of calm that would have lingered in this hellish madness. This was not just my moment of truth. This was a wrestling match of epic proportions. I grabbed my phone, resisting the overwhelming temptation to press the button for authorities. For goodness' sake, I wasn't looking to turn this into a police procedural. As I absorbed the ruckus, ideas began to flow faster than the adrenaline coursing through my veins. Why don't we just invite them all in for tea? It's a perfectly delightful venue for a group therapy session. The mocking smirk on my face must have been priceless. Honestly, how did he think this would end? Did he truly believe I would cower into submission against a small army of discontent? No. I was shedding my skin, becoming a jaguar in this dance of chaos. Taking control of the space around my shed felt invigorating. "So listen closely, Captain Clueless," I continued, the voice of mock authority spilling from my lips. "Here's the deal. Go forth and kindly inform your buddies that this isn't just a hangout spot. It's the home of a fierce protector. And if they dare cross this line, I'll unleash my secret weapon, the most ruthless garden fighting techniques ever known to civilized society." I punctuated my proclamation with an exaggerated swing of a weed whacker, laughing at the absurdity of it all. Perhaps the real lesson here was not just in reclaiming my territory, but in putting an end to this endless courtship with danger. My current altercation felt like a moment suspended in time, the clock ticking down from a momentous decision. The audacity of my abruptly blooming bravado sent tingles across my spine. I could feel the way my heart thudded in time with the alarms, drowning the panic and embracing my wicked humor as a shield. "So, what'll it be, my disturbed yet charming guest?" I asked, my voice a melodious swing of both challenge and invitation. "Do we part ways as enemies, or do you gain an understanding of boundaries today?" The spotlight was on him. Would he slink off into the shadows, joining his raucous crew, or would he stand down before my fiery declaration? My breath caught, suddenly alive with anticipation, like waiting for the gun to fire at the beginning of a race. This moment could slice through the tension thick enough to make a movie director proud. The camera would pan across our faces, my defiance juxtaposed against his conflicted pride. There was an opportunity hidden in the madness. The thrill of discovery lingered in the air, maybe even the chance to extract a little humanity from this circus of chaos. Would he become a part of my story, or would he recede into the shadows forever? Why, oh why, hadn't I expected this electrifying serve from the universe? The question hung in the air, bubbling with equal parts dread and exhilaration, as we both awaited the next move in this surreal game of cat and mouse. The silence that followed my bold proclamation felt unbearable, thick enough to slice through with a rusty butter knife. The intruder's eyes darted between me and the growing shadows of his comrades creeping along the perimeter of my yard, each movement more erratic than the last. It was as if I had unleashed a Pandora's box of existential crisis upon him. What do you think I'm going to do? Just walk out with my dignity intact while you pull your little Tarzan maneuver? I smirked, attempting to maintain my iron grip on the chaotic scene unfolding. That's an ambitious dream, considering you didn't even coordinate your entrance. The absurdity of the situation pressed against me like a thick fog, but deep down, I felt exhilarated, ready to lock horns with whatever the universe threw my way. As if on cue, the pitter-patter of feet joined the cacophony, a raucous gathering illuminated by the dim glow of my yard light. I could see the blurry shapes of this haphazard crew, all decked out in mismatched clothing, sporting an assortment of facial expressions ranging from bravado to sheer confusion, the ultimate misfit brigade. "What the hell do you want?" I shouted into the encroaching darkness, sarcasm dripping from my words like some smug warrior confronting an invading foe. The cadre of intruders beyond the fence hesitated, caught off guard by my unexpected challenge. "Did you come here for an impromptu therapy session as well? Because my garden gnomes make great therapists. They never interrupt, and they don't charge outrageous rates." And honestly, what was more absurd? The imagery of figurative lawn furniture doling out psychological advice or my current predicament. "Shut up," one of them called out. The urgency in his voice punctured the night air like a stray arrow. "We're here for your stuff. You live like a king in your castle while we—" I cut him off with an exaggerated gasp, completing his sentence mockingly. "We struggle like commoners? The burden of our societal woes weigh heavily on our shoulders? Oh, please. Do you think the gods of fate have bestowed such a high-level melodrama upon you? Last I checked, dramatic irony wasn't an acceptable excuse for defiling someone's sanctuary." The collective surprise of their motley crew sparked amusement in my chest as they collectively recoiled at my clever rebuttal. It was a glimmer of hope, a chance to expose the hollow core of their entitlement. Given the carnival of emotions racing through my mind, however, I barely registered the desperate beat of my heart, the persistent alarm still blaring in the background like an eager drumroll announcing the next act in this absurd tragedy. The neighborhood had its share of broken souls fighting demons I couldn't fathom, but stealing from me? The irony of a self-determined gatekeeper chastised for hoarding her trinkets was not lost on me. Armed with garden gnomes, elaborate sarcasm, and maybe just enough righteous fury, I envisioned myself as some sort of whimsical general on a makeshift battlefield, ready to storm the front lines of this chaotic siege. I took a deep breath, ready to throw down the gauntlet. Listen up, misfit army. If you want to brawl over unsharpened shears and a dubious collection of birdhouses, be my guest. Just know, my garden is protected, and I am not afraid of unleashing my snark as a weapon. But the audacity of entitlement sprang forth again. You couldn't possibly understand what we're going through. You have it all, and we have nothing. A wave of righteous indignation threatened to rip away the flimsy shroud of empathy, so I leaned into it, each word dripping with acidic humor. "Oh, honey, the tragic backstory is just rich. You show up to sully my sacred shed and we're now trading tales of woe? What's the deal? Are we swapping Netflix special ideas? Struggles in a shed starring my whiplash of sarcasm and your uncanny ability to misapprehend personal boundaries?" I could see Derek watching from his plush abode just across the street, his expression a subtle dance of amusement and horror. Did he think he'd found a rare breed of obliviousness? Oh, this was far more than a laugh track. The perfect storm brewed between my defiance and their bluster. And then, with the audacity of a bad sitcom, the tension shifted. The first steps of a stormy reconciliation flickered within the stillness of the crew, although I still wrestled with the complete absurdity of the moment. I can't just let you walk away with my stuff. Plus, it's mostly garden tools. I mean, you're not exactly robbing the crown jewels here. I laughed, watching my once-held fear dissolve into a mocking bubble of exhilaration. But I'm more than willing to negotiate. You think the system is against you? Try convincing the absurdity of life to give you a fair shake while you're playing the steal from the neighbor game. That's a twist even my garden gnomes wouldn't agree to. The cornered soul momentarily flashed a sheepish look, intrigue and disbelief uncommon in such encounters washing over his face. The scattered crew began glancing at one another, perhaps pondering my proposal, or deciding their next move in this strange dance of survival. Floating just beyond the bounds of reality and logic, I wondered if bizarre situations truly led people to unexpected moments of clarity. I felt a newfound surge of strength bubbling to the surface, the tide of frustration ebbing away, revealing my undeniable resolve. So, what's it gonna be, Team Delightful Chaotic Mess? Do we keep playing this Game of Thrones where I am the unwilling host? Or are we ready for a plot twist? My voice rang out, a beckoning challenge that hung in the air, thick with nascent possibility. It was a wild gamble. After all, was this the moment we all discovered the line in the sand, or was the line merely a figment of our imaginations? Would they peel back their facades and interact with me instead of the twisted drama fed to them by life's cruel twists? This dance of dialogue had taken a turn towards something poignant, a collision of hopes and futures waiting to articulate their very existence. They waited for a moment too long, and in that stretch of hesitation, I felt my pulse quicken. This was not just any ordinary standoff. It felt like the universe was trading its most chaotic secrets right before my eyes. As I scanned the faces shrouded in uncertainty, a flicker of something familiar caught my attention, a hesitant glimmer of recognition sparking in their eyes. It was as if my outlandish mockery had finally pierced through the fog of entitlement, peeling back the layers of bravado they wore like armor against a world that had perpetually sidelined them. The heaviness shifted, and suddenly, the line between victim and aggressor blurred, a curious dance of solidarity unfolding before me. Who knew garden shears could spark the beginnings of an uneasy dialogue? Look, it's not like I'm swimming in wealth over here, I continued, the heat of indignation evolving into something almost playful. Believe me, my bank account screams underwater louder than any of you. I can't exactly build a moat around my garden gnomes either. You see this shed? I gestured theatrically, wrapping my arm around the very sanctuary they intended to invade. This is not just a collection of my tools. This is my fortress against the chaos out there. Don't you dare call me a dragon hoarding gold. I just want to keep my little kingdom safe. My laughter echoed through the night air, which, partially out of desperation, partially out of boldness, had become my secret weapon. One of the intruders, a lanky fellow with scruffy hair and eyes that flickered between despair and defiance, suddenly stepped forward. You think you understand us? You live here, safe and out of sight from the world we've been forced to navigate. The tone was demanding, earnest even, and it struck a chord within me, a piano string vibrating with a blend of empathy and indignation. Yet I couldn't let my emotions drown in the sob story. I had to harness the moment. Oh, sweetheart, I'm not here to hold a who's got it worse contest, I shot back, rolling my eyes theatrically. Instead, how about we table this dramatic tension and engage in a little brainstorming? Maybe we could create a community, not a crime scene. Glances shifted amongst the makeshift raiders, murmurs traveling through the motley crowd like wildfire. I could practically hear their thoughts racing. Was this woman serious? It was almost laughable, wasn't it? After all, who in their right mind invites potential thieves to a team meeting? But that was precisely where I thrived. The absurdity of the situation was my stage, and the audience? They had no clue they were being treated to a show. Let's face it, I pressed on, wielding my words like a sword coated in irony. We're all frazzled by this raging circus of life, so why don't we wrangle it together? Call it crisis cohesion. Who's in? And just like that, the tension began to crack. The lanky one stared at me, a mixture of confusion and intrigue dancing in his eyes. Perhaps it was the bewilderment of not having been confronted with anything other than disdain that intrigued him. Perhaps it was my sheer audacity. I decided to lean in even heavier and added, "Consider this your golden ticket, my friend? An opportunity to engage in much more than theft. I mean, who wouldn't want an invitation to partake in a truly riveting dialogue?" With a dramatic flourish, I punctuated my proposal. Not only would you be leaving empty-handed, but you would also step out of this night with inspiration. What tales of redemption could we weave together, armed only with my dubious sense of humor? Imagine if we banded together against the real enemy, the absurd system that brings us to this impasse, instead of embracing our actual potential as creative forces. A nervous laugh broke the tension. It was sweet music in a dire symphony of human desperation. Perhaps it was irony that had launched us onto this path. But with each word, I felt that we stood at an invisible precipice, almost ready to leap. They exchanged glances among themselves, a ritual of unspoken dialogue, mirroring the tension I used to feel when confronting Derek in his designer suit of judgment. "I mean, if you really think of it," I continued, buoyed by their occasional chuckles, my ridiculous repartee aside, "wouldn't you rather huddle around a fire exchanging wild dreams instead of lying awake at night fearing the authorities will hunt you down like rabid raccoons?" Moments passed, stretched like a plucked rubber band ready to snap, and I sensed an invisible shift among the crew. The collective reluctance softened, as if the barriers built from desperation and mistrust began melting under my relentless barrage of sarcasm, laced with hopeful undertones. "Truthfully," I said, taking a moment to let the absurdity settle, "I didn't anticipate my defenses would lead to compelling negotiations. Who knew I'd find not just intruders, but potential allies? Others tangled in the same absurd tapestry." The laughter grew warmer, more genuine, and I could sense their resistance waning, transforming like a lovely cartoon, slowly washing away its black and white filter in favor of vibrant hues. As I looked around, my heart swelled with a sense of chaotic triumph, the surreal nature of our encounter reigniting a hint of hope amid this societal debacle. "So what's it going to be, friends or foes?" I quipped one last time, driven by the giddy madness of the moment. Will we rally as a dysfunctional band of misfits sharing laughter, or will we backtrack into the shadows, cursing a world too oblivious to connect? The choice is yours, my dear misappropriated crew. With that, I raised my arms in mock grandeur, reveling in the sheer unpredictability of life and its twisted sense of humor. The unmistakable heady rush of impending change hung about us, thickening the air as we dared to ask the question, was it truly possible to bridge the chasm created by societal failures with a sprinkle of dark humor and shared humanity?